Welcome, fellow travelers of time, to Nocturnal History, where each whispered tale guides you into a realm of calm contemplation. Wherever and whenever you're joining us, be it the quiet of your bedside or the gentle hush of late night hours, take a moment to settle in. If you find yourself drawn into the rhythm of measured grains and whispered marketplace secrets, please tap that like button, share this journey, and subscribe to join our nightly explorations. Tonight, we journey to the sun-baked sands of medieval Timbuktu, where Ibn Umar, one of 3 honored Mikasin, performs the sacred rituals of balance, ensuring every grain of gold dust, every roddle of grain, and even the faintest wisp of salt honors the weight of justice. Before the sun's heat transforms the desert sands into a blistering furnace, you arrive at the grand market of Timbuktu, where the radius of trade stretches like a spider's web across the Sahara. You are Ibn Umar, one of the 3 Mikasin, official weight masters, appointed by the emir to oversee the city's scales. Your responsibility is to ensure that every mithqal of gold dust, every roddle of date syrup, and every quart of millet is measured with scrupulous fairness. Without your work, merchants could cheat travelers, local buyers might be cheated of needed staples, and the emir's commerce tax could be unjustly assessed or evaded. You enter the market's central courtyard just as traders from Sijilmasa finish unloading laden camels. Their caravans creak under the weight of salt blocks, white as moonlight, and leather sacks of grain. You pause by the tall wooden pillars marking the official weighing station, where 3 identical brass scales stand upon pedestals of carved granite. Each scale has 2 pans suspended from finely wrought beams, calibrated to the say and rattle measures codified in the city's ordinances. First, you perform the morning calibration ritual. The chief Mikasnos, Ahmad al-Tijan, arrives with 3 sealed bronze chest keys that unlock the calibration weights stored in the emir's treasury vault. He hands you a sealed cylinder of known weight, 100 mithqal of gold dust, and together you place it on the left pan of your scale. On the right, you add official counterweights, small brass ingots stamped with weight markings. When the beam hangs level, you slide a counterweight along the beam's length until equilibrium is reached. You record the beam's indicator against the calibration chart affixed to the pedestal. A slight misalignment appears, a difference of 2 grains. So you adjust the pivot fulcrum and repeat the process until the beam balances precisely. As you work, the air hums with activity. Merchants in indigo-dyed gandoras shout over the clatter of wooden seals. Hausa traders haggle over cowrie-counted prices. And Mamluk, spice merchants display saffron threads like sun rays. Yet at your corner, a hush falls. The community trusts the weight masters more than any coin. A single false measure could shatter the market's fragile equilibrium. With your scale calibrated, you turn to the verification of the other 2. You place the same cylinder on each pan in turn, adjusting counterweights and fulcrums until all 3 scales show identical balance points. Only then does the chief Mikasis break the seals on the weight's chest, returning the cylinder and unlocking dozens of smaller weights, 1 mithqal, 5 mithqal, 10 mithqal, and silver drachms for minute adjustments, as well as heavier, rattle stones for bulk grains. You relock the chest, secure the keys to your leather belt, and step back to survey your work. Next comes the inspection of merchant scales. Along the market's periphery, every merchant must display two identical scales for buyer and seller counter-checking. You walk the perimeter, checking each merchant's seal, an impression in soft wax bearing your Mikas mark, and verifying that their scales match your official standards. If a merchant's seal is broken or missing, you confiscate the scale and levy a fine recorded on a clay tablet in the emir's ledger. Today, you find one set of scales belonging to a Taghaza salt trader whose wax seal shows a hairline crack. You ask him to bring both pans and his seal for reinspection. He returns with trembling hands. You place his scale alongside your official set and use a small test weight, a 5 Mythgall brass disc, to check its accuracy at 5 different points along the beam. At 3 points, the beam dips, signifying a heavier pan. You note the variations, plus a 1 grain here, plus a 2 grains there. Under Timbuktu's laws, any scale deviating by more than 1 grain must be condemned. The trader pleads ignorance, but you have no discretion. You mark his scale unfit for trade and instruct him to present new scales within 3 market days or face confiscation of goods until compliance. While the merchant gathers his belongings, you retreat to your record-keeping pavilion, a shaded kiosk draped in linen. There, 2 clerks sit before stacks of parchment scrolls and ink pots made from soot and gum arabic. You dictate entries. Scale number 1275, trader, Musa ibn Salim, calibrated at standard, sealed. Scale number 22389, trader, Amr al-Taji, condemned. Deviation +2 to +3 grains. Seal broken. Each clerk copies your words in Kufic script, their reed pens scratching across treated parchment. Accuracy here matters. These entries form the legal basis for fines, appeals, and if necessary, public notices displayed on the Dara, the stone bulletin board, outside the emir's palace. By mid-morning, the market's energy peaks. You return to the weighing station to oversee the day's first official weighings. A caravan of desert merchants presents 12 sacks of millet, each closer to 40 radl, bound for distribution in the oasis towns beyond. The caravan leader, Bilal al-Zarif, kneels and lays out his sacks on the scales platform. His men pour barley into the left pan until it almost overflows. Then you add rattle stones until the beam tilts downward. A clerk notes the total, 480 ratlubber. When Bilal removes the sacks, the clerk rolls the parchment and seals it with the Mikas's clay seal. Next, the emir's tax collectors arrive to weigh a tribute of gold dust sent by a tributary chief from Gao. Each chest is lined with woven mats to prevent dust loss. You place the chest on one pan and pile 100 Mythgall weights on the other until the beam finds equilibrium. Only after you confirm, to within a single grain, that the tribute matches the Ibn Taba's decree, do the tax collectors allow it to pass into the palace vault. Between these heavy tasks, you grant dispute arbitrations. A Songhai trader complains that yesterday's measurement shortchanged him by 3 radl of salt. He produces a sealed parchment stamped with yesterday's weight, 300 radle, but he insists that he delivered 303 ratlo. You ask him to demonstrate the scale himself. He loads the salt into the pan, and you note the tilt before adding weights. When the beam balances, it reads 300 ratlo, the same as the clerk's parchment. You conclude that his salt sacks may have compressed in transport and advise him to bring sacks with newer liners. Though disappointed, he accepts your judgment, and your Mika-sworn seal on the parchment stands unquestioned. As the sun dips toward its high plateau, The call to prayer drifts across the market. You pause your work, wash soot and sweat from your hands at the central fountain, and kneel in quiet devotion to end your morning shift. You wonder, if your scales are the market's backbone, what unseen calibrations ensure justice in distant courts, distant ports, and distant hearts? When the prayer concludes, you return to your pavilion for the afternoon session, calibrating new test weights forged by the city's smiths, training an apprentice in the delicate art of beam balancing and sampling the day's merchant scales for random checks. Each action reinforces public trust in Timbuktu's marketplace, a beacon of fair trade where gold, salt, grain, slaves, and books change hands under your vigilant eye. As dusk falls, you perform one final ritual, locking the weighing station's gates, sealing your calibration chest, and inscribing a closing report on a palm leaf scroll. Day 12 of Jumada al-Ula. 3 official scales calibrated, 1 merchant scale condemned, 20 official weighings recorded, 2 disputes resolved. May balance endure. You fasten the scroll within a clay cylinder, marked with your seal, and carry it to the emir's record hall. There, a scribe files it among months of reports dating back decades, a legacy of measured trade and measured justice. Yet as you retrace your steps through the quieting market, you cannot shake one lingering question. In a city that prizes every grain, every mythgall, and every rattle, how can the intangible weight of trust be measured, and who ensures it remains balanced across time? As the midday sun reaches its zenith, the grand market of Timbuktu hums with relentless energy. Merchants cluster beneath broad awnings of dyed camel hide, their goods arrayed on matting of woven grasses, indigo cloth piled in neat folds, ivory tusks gleaming in shafts of light, and earthenware amphorae brimming with salted fish. Amid this bustle, you, Ibn Umar, Mikas, prepare for the market's most delicate duties: tax assessments, large-scale bulk checks, and training new apprentices in the subtle art of fair weighing, bulk grain, weighing, and tax assessment. Your first task this afternoon is to supervise the weighing of the quarterly grain tax due to the emir's granaries. From the caravanserai of Gao arrives Ali ibn Musa, leading a flotilla of donkey-drawn wagons carrying sacks of millet, a staple of Sahelian trade. Each wagon bears a cloth banner stamped with the tributary region's coat of arms, 3 gold crescents on a field of crimson. Under Timbuktu's custom, Ali's tribute must equal 1/10 of his harvest, calculated on the spot to prevent clerical errors or evasion. You and Ahmad al-Tijan, the chief Mikasner, stride to the official weighing platform, a raised stone dais at the courtyard center. 4 assistants stand ready with a fresh set of rattlestones calibrated this morning. You instruct the lead clerk to unfasten the first sack and tip its contents into the container pan. A hush falls, traders and onlookers gathering to witness the transaction. Any hint of favoritism or mistake could undermine the emir's coffers and your own authority. The beam trembles as grains settle. You slide the counterweight slowly until perfect equilibrium. The clerk reads aloud, 474 radal, 4 ukiya. You nod and signal the assistant to record the amount in a leather-bound ledger, its pages of parchment already filled with columns for region, date, and weight. During the process, a fine wisp of millet dust drifts upward, catching in the sunbeam like a golden mote, an echo of prosperity flowing from distant fields into royal storehouses. Once the first wagon's tribute is recorded, You repeat the procedure for each of the 6 wagons. At wagon 4, a discrepancy emerges. The beam settles at 483 rattle, 9 rattle above the declared amount on Ali's sealed parchment. The caravan leader bows his head. My mikas. Surely this must be an error of loading, or perhaps a theft by my own men. You keep your expression neutral. Merchants often accuse misweighings to avoid additional tax, but your duty is clear. You request Ali's scribe unseal the parchment and read the declared amount. When the parchment indeed bears 474 rattle, 4 ukiya, you dictate a new entry, wagon 4, overweight by 8 rattle, 2 ukiya, excess to be added to a mere store, penalty of 1 rattle imposed per rattle overage. Ali bows deeply and signals a donkey handler to unload the surplus, while the excess grain streams into burlap sacks bound for the granaries. You finalize the entry with your mikas's seal. Merchants watching mutter among themselves, some nodding in approval of your strict fairness, others frowning at Ali's misfortune. Training the apprentice mikas. After the tax assessment, you convene the market's 2 apprentice mikasin, Yahya and Rashid, beneath the shade of a tamarisk tree. Just outside the central courtyard, the apprentices, young men with keen eyes and steady hands, have undergone weeks of theoretical instruction in weights and measures at the madrasa. Today, they will learn the hands-on calibration process. You begin by demonstrating the tested 5-point check, placing a 10 mithqal weight at each of 5 equidistant positions along the beam, near the fulcrum, halfway to each pan, and at each end of the beam. To ensure linear consistency at each position, you explain, minute deviations can reveal worn pivots, bent beams, or uneven pans. You perform the check on one of the market's official scales, verbally noting each reading as the apprentices record them in their notebooks. Next, you hand Yahya a brass counterweight and instruct him to adjust the fulcrum until the scale balances under the 50 mithqal test weight. Yahya's fingers tremble slightly as he slides the weight. You guide his wrist, showing how subtle shifts, mere millimeters, bring the beam to rest level. When he succeeds, you praise him quietly. Well done. Precision here ensures justice for every trader. You then turn to Rashid, selecting a silver drachm weight, 1 fathom smaller than a mithqal, and ask him to place it in the small pan of the secondary scale. The beam tilts sharply, revealing a calibration error. You prompt Rashid to diagnose the cause, a loose pivot screw. He tightens it under your supervision, tests again, and succeeds in restoring balance. This practical lesson in maintenance impresses upon him that a mikasa's duty extends beyond mere numbers to the upkeep of instruments themselves. Afternoon, merchant scale. Inspections with the apprentices briefed. You return to the market's periphery for a second random audit of merchant scales. This afternoon's selection focuses on traders of valuable imports, Berber glass beads, Egyptian linens, and occasionally rare manuscripts. You stop first at the stall of Fatima al-Tabib, a renowned dealer in medicinal concoctions. Fatima greets you warmly, offering a sweet cup of hibiscus tea in a small ceramic bowl. You set the bowl aside politely. Tea is a luxury that must not risk contaminating your calibration, and inspect her scales. Using a 1 mithqal weight, you check the top, middle, and bottom of the beam. Each check yields perfect balance within half a grain, exemplary, given the scale's extensive use. You deliver the good news. Fit for trade. Seal maintained. Fatima's relieved smile shows how seriously traders take your assessments. Next, you contest a claim by Ibrahim ibn Qasim, known for his fine saffron and fragile ego. He insists that yesterday's scale seal broke when a hawk alighted on his stall. You examine his scales, find a slight warp in the right pan, and note a +3 grain deviation. Under the ordinance, the warp renders the scale unusable until repaired. You issue him a formal notice and allow him to submit it for repair at the guild smithy within 2 days. Irritated though he is, Ibrahim accepts that even hawk claws cannot excuse faulty equipment, managing disputes and fines. As dusk approaches, 2 merchants bring a dispute to your pavilion. A pair of Tuareg salt traders claim that non-standard counterweights caused them to shortchange a buyer. They display a battered iron weight stamped with an unknown symbol. You place it on a test scale alongside your own brass 25 mithqal weight and note a discrepancy of +115 grains. The traders claim ignorance, yet the ordinance forbids any unapproved weight. You levy a fine equivalent to 5 rattle of salt, a severe penalty given the commodity's value, and record the incident on a clay tablet for the emir's court. Their rancor subsides when you grant them one chance to replace their illicit weight with an official one at your calibration chest, free of charge. You explain, justice demands no merchant suffer undue hardship, but fairness requires no buyer be cheated. They nod reluctantly, and you help them identify the correct counterweight before they depart. Closing the afternoon session with the last dispute settled and the apprentices dismissed, Yahya to practice calibrating at home, Rashid to inspect the smithy's newly forged weights, you return to your record-keeping pavilion for one final duty, the afternoon report. Under a sky fading from sapphire to crimson, you dictate entries to your clerks by lantern light. 6 wagons of grain taxed, 1 overage corrected, 3 apprentice checks completed, instruments maintained, 10 merchant scales audited, 2 condemned, 1 sealed, 1 dispute resolved, fine imposed, remedial assistance granted. Each line is sealed with your personal stamp. A circular clay impression of interlaced palm fronds symbolizing balance. When the parchment scroll is rolled and bound, you escort it to the Dara at the Emir's palace, where it joins morning's tax ledger under watchful eyes. Open-ended reflection. As you step away from the palace notice board, your reports now public record, you survey the emptying market, now lit by oil lanterns and the first stars of night. The scales stand silent in their brass frames, awaiting tomorrow's calibrations and disputes. You wipe the final beads of sweat from your brow and whisper a prayer to Allah, thanking Him for the gift of justice. Yet as you exit through the sand-scattered archway, a question lingers in your mind. In a realm where every grain, every mithqal, and every rattle is scrutinized, how does one weigh the immeasurable, honor, trust, and the unseen balance of human hearts? After sunset, the grand market's bustle gives way to a quieter rhythm. Lanterns gutter softly beneath the wooden canopies, and the air cools as desert winds stir the dust into golden swirls. Your afternoon report has been dispatched, the apprentices sent home to study their notes, and the evening prayer beckons traders to pause and reflect. Yet for you, Ibn Umar, Mikas of Timbuktu, the day's most consequential duties remain. Tonight, you undertake the annual audit of calibration weights, uncover a subtle conspiracy to manipulate scales, and reaffirm the integrity that underpins commerce across the Sahara. The nightly audit of calibration. Weights, you return to the weighing station's stone dais, where 3 brass scales gleam under lantern light. Beside them stands the calibration chest, a heavy teak box bound in iron straps and locked with 3 distinct bronze keys, the same you and the Chief Mikas used this morning. Inside lie the official weights, a graduated set from 1 mythkal to 1 rattle, each meticulously stamped and numbered. Your task is to verify that no weight has been altered, corroded, or replaced with a counterfeit. With a deep breath, you unlock the chest and lift the lid. The weights rest on velvet-lined compartments, their polished surfaces reflecting flickers of firelight. One by one, you remove each weight, inspecting for uneven wear, pitting, or unauthorized scratches. The 250 mythkal weight, crucial for bullion transactions, bears a hairline dent at its rim. You hold it at eye level and rotate it slowly. In the lamplight, the dent catches a shadow you did not notice by day. With a small magnetized pointer, a tool reserved for weight masters, you tap the dent's edges, listening for the distinct metallic ring. The tone sounds duller than on other weights. Your heart quickens. If this damage impacts the weight's mass, even slightly, every subsequent calibration and measurement could be skewed. You consult your portable weighing skirmisher, a compact beam and counterweight apparatus you carry for emergencies, and perform a quick 5-point check on the dented weight itself, comparing it to an undamaged 250 mythkal standard in your chest. The readings confirm a deviation of +3 grains. Under Timbuktu's ordinances, any calibration weight diverging by more than 2 grains must be retired and replaced. You seal the damaged weight in a canvas bag, label it for the Royal Smithies refabrication, and note in your palm leaf record, weight 22, 250 mythkal retired, dent induced +3 grains, replacement commissioned. Careful not to alarm the market, you remark only to Ahmad al-Tijanda, who has joined you for the audit. He nods gravely and instructs an assistant to bring a temporary 250 mythkal weight from the treasury vault, sealed under strict guard. This weight, though untested by the knight's skirmisher, will suffice until the new weight is recast and restamped, restoring the weights to their compartments. You and Ahmad relock the calibration chest with synchronized clicks of bronze keys. In the quiet that follows, you reflect on how a tiny dent, perhaps caused by an accidental drop or deliberate sabotage, could tip the balance of wealth and trust across the trans-Saharan routes. You know that merchants far beyond Timbuktu will depend on tomorrow's calibrations to price gold dust, salt, and textiles equitably, uncovering a scale tampering scheme. With the weights secured, your attention turns to a more nefarious concern. Rumors have whispered through the market all day of a clandestine group of merchants conspiring to install concealed magnets in scale pans, subtly attracting brass counterweights and falsifying measures in their favor. Officially dismissed as market gossip, the murmurs nonetheless undermine confidence. You resolve to investigate. Under the pretense of final nightly inspections, you walk the market's dimly lit aisle, where elite spice traders display jars of imported cloves, nutmeg, and cinnamon. In each stall, you pose as a weary traveler seeking spices by weight, inviting merchants to demonstrate their buyers and sellers' scales. Most traders recognize you and offer respectful compliance. A few feign ignorance, but dutifully present their equipment. At stall 42, belonging to the renowned Spice Guild, the trader, Sidi Umar al-Karimi, greets you with deference. As you place a 10 mithqal weight in the pan, you subtly pass your magnetized pointer beneath the pan's surface. If the pan contains hidden metal inserts or magnets, a slight pull would tug the pointer, betraying the fraud. The first test shows no anomaly. The pointer slides freely under the pan's base, with no magnetic attraction. You repeat the process at 3 other spice stalls. Each passes the test. The pointer remains unfazed, and no hidden devices emerge. Yet as you near the market's far end, at a humble tent belonging to a collective of woodcarvers exporting ebony artifacts, you find what you seek. The tent's owner, a young man named Musa ibn Habib, shields his scales from view when you approach. Your curiosity piqued, you request verification. As he lifts the scale pan to demonstrate, you slick your pointer along the pan's rim. The tool jolts, clinging for an instant before slipping free. You note a faint whisper of sound as the pan settles back onto its hooks, a telltale sign of an embedded contrivance. You ask Musa politely to open his scale's base. He hesitates, but your Mikas's seal on your satchel commands compliance. He unscrews the small brass bolts under the pan, revealing a thin iron plate concealed between the pan's body and its armature. Metal strong enough to attract magnets, but thin enough to evade casual inspection. The plate would pull on counterweights, causing heavier readings whenever brass ingots were used, thereby shortchanging buyers and enriching the seller. Musa's face pales. I was pressured by a consortium of traders, he admits, voice quivering. They promised protection from desert brigands if I complied. You sense fear, not arrogance, and your duty expands from enforcement to mercy tempered by justice. You confiscate Musa's compromised scales and deliver him a formal notice, a heavy fine equal to twice the value of his last month's trade, to be remitted to the emir's charitable coffers, and a requirement to testify against the conspirators. In turn, you agree to accompany him to the palace tomorrow, ensuring both his safety and the thorough investigation of the consortium's members. As you replace the scale pans, now marked unfit, magnet tampering, your mind churns. The network of corruption extends beyond simple greed. It leverages fear and violence. If left unchecked, it could unravel the market's very foundation. Yet you also recognize that mercy, offering Musa a path to redemption, may yield greater long-term stability than unyielding punishment, a midnight confrontation and resolution. Just before the night's final call to prayer, a palace courier arrives, bearing an urgent missive from the emir himself. You break the red wax seal and read, "To Ibn Umar of the market scales. Reports of market tampering have reached the court. Secure evidence and bring confessions before dawn. The integrity of Timbuktu's trade rests on swift justice." Accompanied by the courier and 2 palace eunuchs, you return to Musa's tent. Under the lantern's glow, Musa identifies 3 leading members of the spice and textile guilds, merchants Harun, Yusuf, and Samira, who orchestrated the magnetic plates scheme. You summon them one by one, and under your authoritative presence and Musa's testimony, each admits involvement. They claim necessity. We could not survive the caravan's perilous journeys without assurances, they plead. Yet the law offers no leniency for undermining fair trade. At the palace courtyard, under Takht-style lanterns, The three conspirators kneel before the emir's magistrate. You present the evidence: Musa's scales, the removed iron plates, your magnetized pointer demonstration, and the notarized testimonies. The magistrate reviews the clay tablet you inscribed, then pronounces the verdict. Each conspirator must pay a severe fine, forfeit their market stand for 6 months, and serve a month in the emir's guard battalion, a sentence both punitive and restorative. As dawn's first light touches the palace walls, you escort the convicted merchants to the guardhouse. Musa, exonerated by his cooperation, is freed from his fine and rewarded with immunity, though he must surrender any profits gained through tainted scales. The consortium's dissolution sends a clear message. Timbuktu tolerates no compromise in measurement or justice, a reflection on enduring trust. Returning alone to the now quiet weighing station, you set out fresh parchment and ink to record the night's proceedings. Each line you write, entries for weight retirement, scandal exposure, and justice served, becomes part of the city's enduring archive. Before you seal the final scroll, you step outside onto the courtyard's stone floor. The sky above blazes with morning stars, the Milky Way's silver bridge arching over the great mosque's minarets. A solitary prayer rises from the mosque engineers, whose ritual follows the celestial map, just as your work follows the precise order of calibrated weights. You pause, recalling the day's events, the subtle dent in a kingly weight, the clandestine magnet tampering, the reluctant confession, and the emir's measured verdict. Each moment hinged on the faithful application of measurement, on tools tested, procedures upheld, and conscience invoked. Through these small acts, the market's promise of fair exchange endures. As merchants, travelers, and scholars begin to stir in the pre-dawn hours, you whisper a final question into the stillness. If the scales of commerce can be bent by hands, guided by fear or greed, how can the greater scales of society measure and protect the fragile balance between justice and mercy? With that thought in your mind, you return to the chest to secure the weights and lanterns, ready to begin anew when the market gates open and commerce resumes its vital flow. Before dawn's rosy light brushes the Bosphorus, you awaken on the narrow plank bed in your workshop's loft, the faint scent of pitch and wood smoke drifting through the shuttered window. You are Kemal Effendi, master shipwright of the Imperial Naval Yard at Kasımpaşa, entrusted by the Capudan Pasha himself to supervise the construction of a new galley destined to patrol the Aegean's sapphire waters. Though your family has served the Sultan's fleet for generations, today you bear the weight of unexpected delays. Imported oak beams for the keel have languished on a merchant galley seized for unpaid taxes, and rumors swirl that the prized cedar masts from Lebanon will not arrive until next month. You rise quietly, mindful of the young apprentices asleep on mats below. Their steady breathing is punctuated by the ambient creak of hulls drying in the yard and the distant bleat of goats on the hillside. You wash your face with cool water drawn from a copper ewer, then wrap a faded cotton shalvar and tunic around your lean frame. A leather belt holds your small toolkit, a compass, a folding measuring rule of bone marked in Ottoman Arshin, and a sharpened adze blade. You hurriedly braid your salt dark hair and secure it beneath a linen skullcap. The call to Fajr has not yet echoed from the minarets, but you pause in silent prayer, seeking wisdom for the day's challenges. Stepping onto the dew-slick planks of the lower loft, you survey the shipyard below. A dozen galleys in various stages of completion line the slipway. Some rest fully rigged, their lateen yards tied with fresh hemp. Others lie propped on M-shaped cradles, their empty hulls waiting to be caulked and painted. Your galley, the new Mavakushak, Blue Falcon, occupies the central berth, its oak ribs rising like skeletal arches against the dawn sky. The shipwrights you supervise, long-bearded foremen, tattooed Christian coopers, and young Muslim apprentices, are already stirring, stoking the brazier fires used to bend planks where the midday sun may not reach. You descend the ladder to ground level and exchange a respectful nod with the overseer, Ismail Ah, whose wide shoulders bear the weight of administrative duties, securing timbers, negotiating with carpenters, and forwarding daily progress reports to the Kapudan's secretariat. "Good morning, Effendi," he murmurs, voice low. "The oak from Odessa arrives at sundown. Should we prepare mortar for caulking?" You glance at the exposed seams along the keelson where planking meets ribs. Indeed, once the planks are fastened, you will fill the gaps with hemp and pitch before covering them with a coat of red lead and white glaze. But without cedar spars, you cannot install the crossbeams or begin rigging. You shake your head. Not yet. We must first fit the breast timbers and lay the deck beams. Let the oak serve its purpose here until the masts arrive. With Ismail's understanding nod, you stride toward the ship's stern, where the guild's master joiner, Petros, from Chios, shapes the stern post's curved profile by fire-bending green oak. Sparks drift from the blazing coals beneath a heated frame, and Petros, dark-eyed and deft-fingered, slides a steaming plank into place. He glances up and salutes you. "Kumpas yerinde, Kemal Aha," he calls in Greek-accented Turkish. "Your measurements are correct, Master Kemal." You inspect the join. The curve of oak sweeps gracefully, promising both speed through the waves and a sturdy counterbalance for the oarsman's rhythm. Satisfied, you approve his strike and move on. Your next stop is the framing station, where a pair of Christian coopers, Serbian Orthodox brothers, whose forefathers traded wine in Dalmatia, fit the futoks, those intermediate ribs that give the hull its refined shape. They work the adze with muscular grace, shaving away wood until each edge aligns with the parent timbers. You crouch to examine a low futtock, holding your compass to confirm the curvature against your architectural drawing, a vellum scroll drafted by the imperial draftsman. The angles meet within a hair's breadth of tolerance. The hull's lateral symmetry remains unbroken. You nod your approval with measured satisfaction. By mid-morning, the sun climbs high and the yard hums with activity. Apprentices fetch bundles of copper nails imported from Bursa's foundries. Caulkers prepare their mallets and oakum spinners. Painters mix pigments for the hull's decorative stripe. You gather your foremen beneath the central atchlik, a grove of plane trees that offers shade and the place where daily meetings occur. Unfurling your vellum plan on a makeshift table, a broad plank set upon sawhorses, you review today's objectives. 1. Fasten the deck beams across frames 12 to 18 using oak tree nails tamped tightly. 2. Install the breast timber frames at bow to strengthen the prow. 3. Begin shaping the beakhead platform under the future bowsprit. 4. Prepare the mortars for next week's caulking session. You assign tasks. Ahmed, the the caulker, will assemble oakum and heat pitch. Petros will supervise deck beam alignment. Mihail, the coffer, will oversee joinery of the beakhead supports. And the apprentices, under your direct guidance, will plane the deck planking, the maritime-grade elm slated for early installation. As you speak, you note a wild olive sapling has sprouted between ribs near frame 15, a sign that debris left in the keelson area has allowed seeds to germinate. You instruct an apprentice to remove the sprout and clear any detritus that might compromise future sealing. By the time midday prayers ring out, your team has set the first group of deck beams, their tenons driven snugly into pockets cut across the frames. The sight of solid oak beams bridging the vessel lifts your spirits, for they mark significant progress toward a watertight hull. You assist Petros in aligning the beams with a long straight edge, checking their level by sighting across the yard. Perfectly level, you remark, the phrase almost a benediction. Tomorrow, we will fasten them with finishing nails and tree nails, and after a quick lunch of dried figs, cubes, and goat cheese beneath the plane trees, you convene a brief lesson for your apprentices. Drawing in the sand with a piece of charcoal, you sketch a cross-section of the hull, then demonstrate the principle of wedge caulking, how oakum, fibrous hemp, must be driven into seams with an iron caulking mallet and then sealed with boiling pine resin, preventing seawater from seeping through. You show them the caulking irons, flattened chisels with hooked ends, and emphasize the rhythm, a firm strike, followed by tamping, then another strike. Each apprentice practices the motion on scrap planking under your precise correction. You stress that in rough Mediterranean waters, even the smallest leak can compromise a vessel's buoyancy and endanger every rower and sailor aboard. As the afternoon wanes, you return to the prow to inspect Mihail's progress on the beakhead supports. These intricately carved oak beams will soon carry the area for anchor storage and decorative motifs, often crescent moons or the Sultan's Tugra. Mihail's work shows promise, though one support beam's mortise seems slightly askew. You grip the wooden wedge, guide his chisel's angle by hand, and demonstrate how to pare down the mortise's side for a snug fit. He watches attentively, then resumes work with renewed focus. In a few moments, the beam slides into place cleanly, its grain aligned with the bow's shear. Evening approaches as you inspect the day's work. The yard's denizens pause for the Isha prayer, their tools set aside. You climb a small ladder to the deck beams and survey the yard from the rising hull. The deck beams trace the vessel's silhouette like ribs embracing the sky. Behind you, the plane trees rustle softly. Ahead, the Prince's Islands loom as dark shapes on the horizon. A brisk breeze carries the scent of seaweed and varnish. Yet you cannot ignore the unfinished business at hand. Without the cedar masts, the galley cannot be fully rigged. Without the oak from Odessa, certain interior bulkheads cannot be secured. And without the gilded stern ornamentation commissioned from the palace carvers, the Mavikushak cannot display its full imperial prestige. Tomorrow's meeting in the Kapudan Pasha's council may demand explanations for these delays, and you must prepare both progress reports and pleas for extended deadlines. Descending from the hull, you pause at the small shrine to Tufaine's patron saint, a carved stone niche containing a brass plate inscribed with blessings for builders. You place a fragment of the plane tree's dried leaf upon the niche and utter a quiet prayer for safe passage and swift resolutions. A passing guard gives you a respectful salute, acknowledging both your station and your devotion. As lanterns ignite along the slipway and the apprentices scatter to their modest quarters, you return to your loft. By candlelight, you draft the day's report, the number of beams installed, the hours spent on caulking demos, the removal of debris, and the identification of supply delays. At the bottom, you add a note of caution, awaiting cedar spars and Odessa oak, ship hull closed, pending rigging. Recommend interim fastening of internal bulkheads with temporary wedges to maintain structural integrity. Lying on your plank bed, you ponder the delicate interplay of craftsmanship, supply chains, and imperial politics. The Mavikushak stands half-born, a testament to human skill, cut short by forces beyond the shipwright's bench. Yet you also recognize that every plank, every joint, and every caulking strike carries the promise of maritime dominion, a ripple of Ottoman power from Constantinople to Cairo and beyond. Sleep beckons, but in the hush before slumber, one question echoes in your mind. If a single missing spar can delay an entire galley, what vulnerabilities lurk within the vast flotillas of empire? And who among us will ensure that each vessel sails whole into history's currents? The next morning dawns cool and mist-hung over the Bosphorus, the gray currents slipping quietly beneath the shipyard's scaffolding. You will rise before the first call to prayer, mindful that today's work must concentrate on internal reinforcement and preliminary rigging preparations, each task edging the Mavikushak closer to seaworthiness, despite the cedar spar's absence. You descend from your loft into the yard, just as the apprentices arrive, their feet crunching on scattered wood shavings. The first order of business is to secure the temporary bulkhead wedges you recommended last night. These wedges, made of seasoned oak scrap, fit into mortises cut between every third frame, bracing the hull against torsional strain until the full set of deck beams and interior timbers is in place. You and Ismail lead the foreman along the starboard side, setting a wooden template against each mortise to ensure the wedge's faces align precisely with the frame's curvature. At frame 7, the first wedge glides in easily, its tapered form pressing both adjacent ribs until a crisp ping echoes, signaling a snug fit. You test its strength by tapping the exposed end with a wooden mallet. It holds firm. At frame 9, however, the mortise has widened slightly, likely from yesterday's heavy hammering, and the wedge rattles. You note the gap, then demonstrate how to tighten it. Remove the wedge, apply a thin slather of linseed oil mixed with powdered lime to the mortise's interior, and reinsert the wedge. The oil acts as a temporary expansion agent overnight, swelling the wood just enough to create a friction fit. The apprentices watch raptly as you slide the wedge home, then test it again. This time, it holds without movement. You praise their attention to detail. In 15 days, you may forget the sashimi of that mortise, but you will remember how wood takes oil as metal takes temper. With all wedges installed and checked, you gather your crew beneath the plane trees for a quick refresher in futtock and frame alignment. Drawing a chalk outline on a raised plank, you trace the camber line, the gradually rising curvature of the deck that channels water over the bulwarks. Using the apprentice's straight edges and your folding rule, you show them how each wedge must support frames so that the camber remains consistent from bow to stern. One apprentice, Hassan, frowns at the irregular gap between wedges at frames 13 and 14. You reassure him. That gap indicates moisture loss. We'll re-soak the wedges in water this afternoon. Dry wood is strong wood, but too dry will shrink away. He nods and sets to work. By mid-morning, the deck planking group gathers at the stockpiled elm boards. These boards, imported from the Black Sea's timber ports, are of exceptional straight grain, prized for resistance to rot. Petros and Mihail supervise as apprentices plane each board's underside to a uniform thickness of 2 inches, using bench planes honed to mirror their foot-raised platform's curvature. You pause by Hassan and inspect his first planking. The surface gleams under your lantern's lingering polish, but the edge bears a nick. You demonstrate how to hold the plane at a slight angle, 2 degrees of bevel, to avoid joggling the edge, then pass him a tightening wrench to adjust the plane's mouth. Within minutes, his second board emerges flawless. As noon approaches, you lead the crew to the watering trough for midday ablutions. The apprentices rinse sawdust and pitch from their hands, while the foremen sip mulberry juice and nibble on olives soaked in vinegar. You gather Ismail and Petros to discuss the cedar spar arrival. A messenger from the Grand Vizier's office delivered a sealed scroll this dawn, promising the spar's conveyance on the next Imperial dispatch ship, likely within 2 weeks. Your pulse quickens at the news. 2 weeks is an eternity in shipbuilding, yet it also grants you time to perfect the hull's interior before the masts demand placement. Returning to the hull, you oversee the installation of the first stringer timber, a long, polished oak beam running parallel to the keel just above the waterline. This stringer will stiffen the hull against wave impact. You mark its stations on the frames with chalk, then coordinate 4 apprentices to lift the heavy beam into place using block and tackle secured to overhead scaffolding. The beam groans as it shifts, then settles into its notches against the frames. You step onto a sawhorse to level it visually, confirming alignment with your sighting rod. Petros drills pilot holes, and Mihail fastens the stringer with bronze clinch nails, each driven flush and caulked with hemp fiber and pitch. As you work, you instruct the apprentices on clinch nailing technique, striking the nail's point through the beam until the head rests on the leather pad, then bending the protruding tip over a copper washer to lock it solid. In the afternoon, your attention turns to the future oar ports, the rectangular apertures through which long oars will pass. These oar ports must be evenly spaced, squared, and reinforced. You measure a grid on the hull side, 8 ports to port, 8 to starboard, each 5 feet apart. Using a small plumb bob, you ensure the verticals align. With a large steel square, you confirm each rectangular opening's right angles. You instruct the apprentices to mark cut lines with chalk, then watch as they carefully gird the hull side with portable sash saws. Once the cut's complete, you fit a oak chocks around each opening's edges, planned to snug dimensions to prevent chafing of oars and to distribute hull stresses. You explain that the chocks also serve as rubbing stations when the galley beaches ashore, protecting the vessel's planking. While the apprentices file away the sawdust, you convene a brief meeting with Ismail and your senior foreman on the kinema platform, a raised deck section that will form the crew's walkway. You outline the need to pre-drill bolt holes for the bronze stanchions that will support the canvas awnings. Without precise pre-drilling, later insertion under stress could split the teak decking, You demonstrate how to use a bradawl to pierce the wood fibers, then a twist bit to widen the hole to the required diameter. Each apprentice practices on scrap boards until their holes run true and clean. As Asr approaches, you dismiss the apprentices for their prayers and gather your foremen for the day's final task. Mock rigging, lashing a temporary yard rope between two overhead beams. You hang a spare lateen yard and demonstrate its deployment. You show them how the yard's two ends must pivot on a hitch plate, allowing the sail's angle to adjust with the wind. Though the actual spars are not yet aboard, this exercise trains riggers' hands and eyes. You walk each man through the steps, untying the yard from its cradle, hoisting it aloft with the halyard, cleating the line at the belaying pin, and then lowering it again smoothly. The apprentices take turns, their practiced tugs soon smooth enough to suggest that once the real spars arrive, the crew will need only a morning's drill to be proficient. With the yard returned to its cradle, the plane tree's shadows lengthen. You signal the end of work and assemble everyone for a ritual inspection along the hull's entire length. Each foreman calls out the day's accomplishments. Stringer installed, bulkhead wedges tested, oar ports chalked, deck beam notches cleaned. You nod at each report, then conclude, tomorrow we will remove the temporary bulkhead wedges for final fitting, fasten the keelson reinforcement, and prepare the hull's exterior for its first coat of tar. Keep your measuring rules close and your eyes keener. Each line we lay now determines how the Mavakushak slices through the waves tomorrow. The men disperse, with respectful bows, heading to the communal ablution trough before evening prayer. You pause by the hull's prow, where the beakhead supports gleam in the dying light. A soft breeze stirs the unfinished curves, and for a moment you imagine the galley in full sail, oars beating in unison, the imperial flag snapping above the forecastle. Alone now, you climb a small ladder into the hull's interior, placing a hand on the central keelson, the massive oak beam that anchors the ship from stem to stern. You trace the wood's grain with your fingertips, recalling how you shaped it from a single tree felled in the Balkan forests. You whisper a silent benediction for its coming strength and resilience. May it bear the stresses of storm and sea with steadfast courage. As twilight deepens, you return to your loft to draft the day's report, listing wedges installed and tested, stringer and stanchion work completed, masts awaited, and tasks slated for tomorrow. In the hush before sleep, one thought resonates above all. Even the grandest vessel begins as a collection of carefully aligned timbers, and in those alignments, the destiny of empire is quietly forged. Dawn breaks softly over the Bosphorus, casting pale gold light on the half-finished hull of the Mavikushak. Last night's gentle breeze carried the promise of the cedar spar's arrival today, an essential turning point in the galley's creation. You rise before the apprentices, slipping into your well-worn shalvar and gathering your tools, the folding rule, compass, adze, and that small brass key to the Kapudan Pasha's secret stokehold, where the spars await inspection. Below, the yard already hums with activity as woodworkers and caulkers prepare for the day's defining tasks, closing the hull, stepping the mast, and launching the vessel's first ceremonial ladle of seawater, arrival and inspection of cedar spars. At first light, a slender skiff, carrying two armed janissaries, brings the spars ashore. You hurry down the slipway to greet the escort, noting the fine Lebanese cedar's pale, creamy grain and its slight citrus aroma. Each spar measures nearly 80 feet, sufficient length for the main mast of a galley this size, and bears the official Ottoman cipher burned into the base to certify its origin. With Ismail Ah's assistance, you heave the heavier mast onto wooden trestles, then unfurl the length of canvas to protect it from abrasion. Before any rigging or raising, you must confirm that each spar is straight within a tolerance of 1 arshin per 20. You stretch a taut measuring line, your folding rule extended end to end along the spar's length. At intervals of 5 arshin, you check the line's contact with the wood. The spar's slight bow at frame 15 is acceptable, but a gentle rasping of your compass's convex side over the wood confirms no hidden twists or kinks. Satisfied, you record the measurements on your vellum scroll. Main spar, 79 arshin, deflection, 0.5 arshin, at 15 point, within tolerance. Mizzen spar, 61 arshin, deflection, 0.3 arshin, at 12 point, acceptable. You then lead the apprentices in planing the spar bases. Each must seat perfectly into the mast step, a robust oak block embedded in the keelson. Using a heavy draw knife, you pare away millimeter-thin shavings until the base fits snugly without rocking. A final test involves inserting the spar into the mast step and sighting its verticality with your plumb bob. When the bob's line falls evenly down the spar's face, you mark the step position with charcoal. The mast is ready to be stepped. Stepping the main mast, a rolling scaffold of timber and ropes encircles the vessel. 6 apprentices haul taut lines through pulleys anchored in the workshop walls. This improvised derrick will lift the heavy spar upright. You oversee every knot, the running bowline at the spar's heel, the figure 8 stopper to prevent slippage, and the secondary safety rope tied to the mast's shoulder. With a coordinated tug, the spar slides from the horizontal supports, creaking against the wooden blocks, then settles into the mast step. A collective grunt rises from the apprentices as the spar tips upward. You steady the spar against the mast step, calling out clear commands. Ease the port halyard. Take tension on the starboard. Steady now. Inch by inch, the cedar beam straightens, guided by ropes and voices. When it reaches vertical, you shout, "Hold!" and a crew of foremen drives a heavy oak wedge into the step's mortise, locking the spar's heel in place. You inspect the joint, ensuring the wedge contacts both spar and keelson firmly, and then smear hot pine resin around the seam to seal it against water ingress. With the main mast secure, you proceed to the mast collar, a forged iron band that braces the spar against lateral movement. You lower the collar over the mast shoulder and tighten its iron bolts until it grips the wood firmly. A final inspection with the compass confirms the mast's perfect alignment, straight, true, and ready to bear sail. Closing the hull and sealing. Meanwhile, Petros has marshaled the apprentices to finish caulking the hull's exterior seams. With the cedar spars now stepped, you can complete the hull's closure. The caulkers press oakum fiber into every seam between planks, pounding it home with wooden mallets and chisels until not a hair's breadth remains. Once the oakum is flush, you ladle hot pitch into each seam, working quickly to prevent premature cooling. The apprentices smooth each pitch-filled groove with caulking irons heated over the brazier's embers, leaving a uniform black fillet along the hull. With the seams sealed, you supervise the application of the first tar coat. Apprentices brush on a mixture of pine tar, boiled linseed oil, and ground charcoal, creating a protective layer that repels marine organisms and resists sun damage. You note where the tar pools too heavily, around frame 18 and near the stern, as these areas will require sanding and leveling tomorrow. The deep black surface gleams under the afternoon sun, signaling that the hull is now watertight. Rigging the early running gear. As the hull work concludes, your attention turns to running rigging preparations. The lateen yard, stored in the foremast's cradle, must be affixed temporarily to provide balance during sea trials. You and the apprentices fit strong hawsers, coils of hemp rope, through the yard's cringle, hoisting it half a mast length above deck. A series of belaying pins on the pin rail allows you to secure the yard's tack and lift ropes, demonstrating the sail's eventual motion. Though cloth will not be bent to the yard until the deck rails are finished, this exercise trains the rigging hands in rope, handling and knot tying essential for the maiden voyage. You then install the bumpkin spar, a small arm projecting from the stern, to hold sheets and brails that adjust the sail's angle. Carved from a robust cedar offcut, the bumpkin fits into a mortise reinforced with bronze straps. You drive bronze nails at 45-degree angles to lock the straps in place, then secure the bumpkin with wedges and a ring bolt for the block. The apprentices practice threading blocks and deadeyes, ensuring each block's sheave spins freely without binding under a hand tension test. Final adjustments and inspection. By late afternoon, the major structural and rigging milestones are complete. You convene a final inspection under the plane trees, calling each foreman, Petros, Mihail, and Ismail, to stand before the hull. One by one, they present their work. Spar bases fit and wedged, hull seams caulked and tarred, running rigging ready, early hardware installed. You move among them, inspecting details, tightness of mast collars, evenness of tar coat, smooth operation of blocks. Where you find minor lapses, an uneven caulking bead here, a slack belaying line there, you demonstrate corrections, then praise the foreman's overall craftsmanship. Finally, you step back and gaze upon the Mavakushak in its entirety, a powerful hull, sealed against the sea, crowned by its main spar reaching skyward, its tarred sides gleaming like obsidian. The ship stands ready for launch, save for decorative work on the stern and the installation of cannon ports, a task reserved for the arsenal's gunners. Yet, in its structure and rigging, the galley already embodies the Empire's might and your lineage's skill. Launch preparations and reflection. As the sun dips below the Prince's Islands, you sound the shipyard bell, an announcement that the Mavikushak will be launched at first light tomorrow. Apprentices gather beneath the hull's bow, tracing its lines with their fingertips and whispering excitement. You climb into the deckless hull and lay your hand on the newly sealed deck beams, feeling their solidity underfoot. You envision the oars locked in oar ports, rowers' benches stowed, and the call to row rising over the water. Before leaving the yard, you perform a final ritual at the small shrine to builders, a sprinkle of wine at the ship's heel, a murmur of thanks to divine patrons, and a prayer that the vessel serve the Sultan loyally. As you walk back to your loft, your mind drifts through the day's victories and challenges, the cedar spar's perfection, the hull's watertight seal, the apprentice's steady progress, and the yard's relentless rhythm. Yet one question lingers as you ready your report for the Kapudan Pasha. If an empire's power can be measured by the reach of its galleys, how fragile is that power when its might depends on the precise fitting of timbers, the careful sealing of seams, and the trust placed in countless hands to shape history, one spar, one seam, one caulking stroke at a time? You awaken before dawn in your modest chamber at the base of the Pharos, the great lighthouse of Alexandria. The chamber's walls, built from massive limestone blocks, still hold the night's chill, despite the sea breezes that slip through the narrow slit window. As the appointed keeper of the Pharos, you, Cleon of Canopus, bear the quiet burden of ensuring that the beacon atop the island guides every merchant, galley, warship, and fishing skiff safely into the harbor. Though your quarters are simple, a pallet of woven reeds, a single oil lamp, and a shelf for ritual offerings, the tower rises above you, its spiraling ramps and vaulted chambers weaving a vertical labyrinth. Your day begins in the first watch chamber, where the brass lanterns you lit at dusk still burn low, their olive oil wicks smoldering beneath soot-blackened chimneys. You dress in a simple wool tunic dyed deep indigo, a color chosen for its resistance to sun bleaching, and wrap a linen himation around your shoulders. At your belt hangs a small leather pouch containing lumps of resin, a handful of frankincense grains, and 2 bronze keys, one for the lantern grates, the other for the storeroom's chest of extra wicks and oils. You step barefoot onto the stone floor, feeling the faint vibration of waves breaking against the rocky foundation. Before ascending, you perform the morning offering, placing 3 resin lumps and a pinch of incense into the chamber's built-in brazier. The faint smoke curls upward, a silent prayer to Poseidon and Hephaestus, that the sea remain calm and your lantern's flame steady through the night. You whisper an address to both gods. Grant me hands unwavering and sight unclouded, that no vessel may founder upon these rocks. With the offering complete, you unlock the lantern grate and light the wick from the dying embers of last night's fire, coaxing a steady flame to life. You trim the wick with a small bronze scissors so that the lamp burns with a blue-white cone rather than sputtering orange tongues. Satisfied, you secure the grate and seal it with the key, its heft cold and reassuring in your palm. Now begins the ascent. The Pharos' spiral ramp winds upward in broad, shallow steps, gentler than stairs, yet relentless in its incline. As you climb, you pass successive chambers, once used by engineers and scribes, recording ship sidings, storage rooms for oil amphorae, and small alcoves where previous keepers left votive offerings of coins or carved shells. In these silent spaces, you catch your breath, run a palm along carved hieroglyphs left centuries ago, and remember that your own service is but the latest layer in an unbroken chain of guardians. At the second terrace, you pause to inspect the signal horns that announce the lighthouse's presence in fog. The bronze horns, long and curved like the necks of swans, rest on wooden trestles beside the ramp. You test one by lifting it to your lips and blowing a clear, resonant note. The sound travels across the harbor, echoing faintly off the eastern mole. The horn's patina gleams, and you brush abrasive grit from its mouthpiece, ensuring no obstruction dulls its tone when you must sound it during sudden mists. Continuing upward, you enter the catwalk balcony 18 cubits above the sea. Here, the wind slackens momentarily behind the tower's curvature. You lean against the stone railing and survey the harbor. Small fishing boats tethered to buoys. Merchant ships minting gentle wakes as they drift toward the safe haven. And the low hum of dock workers unloading crates of papyrus and textiles. Beyond the bustle, the azure Mediterranean stretches to the horizon, a tranquil expanse that belies the hidden shoals lurking beneath. You note one merchant galley whose purple sails announce Tyrian manufacture, and a Roman grain ship whose massive hull rides low in the water, a signal that the Alexandrians will feast well this season. Turning back to your duties, you ascend the final flight of the ramp, carved so smoothly that your footsteps make no sound. The lantern chamber lies at the very summit, an octagonal room enclosed by brass-framed glass panels, some cracked and repaired with lead strips. Here sits the great brazier, a massive bronze bowl set upon a stone pedestal. Last night's embers still glow dimly, smoldering beneath the lattice of oak stakes. You retrieve a clay flask of olive oil, pressed just yesterday in the royal groves of Canopus, and pour a measured stream onto the glowing coals. The flames flare to life, dancing taller and brighter than before, illuminating the chamber's high ceiling and casting shifting shadows on the walls. Your next task is to polish the reflective surfaces that amplify the beacon's light. These are not great polished bronze mirrors, but rather layers of gilded copper, arranged in a hemispherical array behind the flame. Using a soft rag dampened with vinegar, you wipe away the soot and salt spray that clings to the gilded sheets. As you work, the flame's glow flickers across your face, and you imagine the light carried outward in concentric circles, a silent promise of safe passage. When each sheet gleams, you step back to inspect the beam's intensity. The lantern's radiance should be visible from at least 20 stadia on a clear night. With the lantern chamber in full blaze, you prepare for the morning's ship registry. In a small alcove beside the braziers stands your ledger, a papyrus scroll affixed to a wooden board. You dip a quill into dark blue ink made from sepia and lute extract, then record the ship's last seen during the night. Night log, Alexandria, Eastern Waters. At 2:15 a.m., a fishing felucca set out from Pharos Isle, heading toward the market docks. It caught the east current. Smooth sailing, safe passage. Then at 3:30 a.m., a grain auger arrived from Ostia, docking quietly at the Alexandria granary. Its shallow draft meant no deviations. Routine, uneventful. By 4:45 a.m., a merchant galley limped in from Tyre, bound for the Serapeum Quay. Its sails had torn mid-journey. Harbor tow was required. Finally, at 5:20 a.m., a Roman birem made port, tugged in from Carthage, reaching the naval dockyards. There was a minor breach in the hull. Nothing fatal, but enough to slow it down. As you jot each entry, you note subtle details. The pitch smell clinging to the grain auger's hull. The flags of the Carthaginian crew fluttering limp in the breeze. And the cautious angles at which Tyrian traders approached. These observations, though seemingly trivial, may inform repairs, security watch, or sanctions against negligent captains. You roll the ledger closed and secure it with a leather thong, the bindings worn smooth from nightly use. At last, you make your final rounds of the lantern chamber, checking that the oil reservoir beneath the brazier is full, ensuring spare vessels stand ready, and dismissing any ember sparks that threaten the tower's wooden supports. You descend one level to the signal room, where a brazier mirror and second horn stand ready should fog envelop the harbor. You leave a small offering of fresh juniper berries, whose resinous scent clears the air. Beside the horn, an invitation to the mist to keep its veil thin. Descending the Pharos to the island's base, you pause at the keeper's storehouse, its doors held shut by a bronze bar and your second key. Inside lie amphorae of olive oil, boxes of ship's biscuits for distress signals, and a small chest of grain intended as emergency fodder for any mariners found stranded. You inspect each amphora's seal for cracks, tap the amphorae to assess oil levels, and weigh them on a simple steelyard scale. Never too little, never too much. For balance is as vital in provisioning as it is in light. You note one amphora has lost 2 rhodiel to minor leakage at its cork. You transfer its contents to a fresh vessel and mark the damaged jar for repair under the craftsman's charge. Returning to your living chamber, you extinguish the oil lamp and sit at the small stone desk to partake in a simple breakfast. 2 flat loaves of barley bread, salted fish preserved in olive oil, and a handful of figs you stacked last night for ripeness. The first rays of sunrise crest the Mediterranean, painting the harbor in rose and gold. You sip water from a terracotta bowl and contemplate the day ahead, for you must traverse the island's narrow causeway to the mainland, deliver the morning registry to the harbor magistrate, visit the stonecutters repairing the tower's base, and oversee new glass panel installations ordered by the Royal Engineers. As the sea breeze warms, you rise and gather your tools, quill, ledger, keys, and a small bronze lamp for the walk across the causeway. You pause at the archway leading to the ramp, glance up at the Pharos' silhouette against the glowing sky, and consider its unspoken promise that every night its flame stands vigil over Alexandria, the city of commerce, learning, and wonder. Yet you wonder if a single flicker of flame can save a ship, but its absence doom 100 more. How must you measure the weight of each dawn, each ember kept alive in the centuries yet to come? Late morning finds you traversing the narrow causeway from Pharos Island to mainland Alexandria, your bronze lamp swinging from your belt to guide unwary fishermen past the submerged reefs at low tide. The lighthouse's beacon behind you still burns, a pulse of reassurance that you left in steady hands. Your ledger and keys occupy your belt pouch. Each step across the worn stone slabs reminds you of the constant connection between tower and city, flame and law. Delivering the morning registry, your first stop is the harbor magistrate's office, a white sunlit courtyard fronting the great harbor. 2 guards in linen Quran stand at the gate. They raise spears as you approach, presenting your seal, a small clay impression of a rising flame. You are admitted. Within, the magistrate, a portly man named Menelaus, stands behind a desk strewn with amphora receipts and ship manifests. His toga bears the salt-stained hem of someone who spends long hours outdoors. You unroll your coastal registry scroll upon the desk's smooth marble. Menelaus scans the entries beneath his furrowed brow. 2 to 15 a.m., Felucca safe. 3:30 a.m., grain auger from Ostia. 4:45 a.m., Tyrian galley in tow. 5:20 a.m., Carthaginian birem. He nods and inquires about any anomalies. You mention the torn sail on the Tyrian galley and the hull breach on the bireme. He jots notes and sighs. Repair crews are already dispatched to the eastern mole for the auger's damaged bow. The Carthaginian captain will be fined 2 drachmae for neglecting hull maintenance. You agree that accountability must remain firm. As he stamps the registry with his official seal, you add a final note. Recommend increased inspections of grain ships from Ostia for concealed moisture damage. Menelaus tucks the scroll into a locked chest and dismisses you with a curt nod. Inspecting the tower's stonework, emerging into the bustle of the Canopic Way, you thread your way past merchants hawking papyrus and cedarwood idols. Your next task lies above, at the Pharaoh's Foundation quarries, at the foot of the Com Eldeka. Here, stonemasons repair a series of cracked limestone blocks at the lighthouse's base, stress fractures caused by shifting sands and the tower's own weight. You call for the foreman, an amiable Alexandrian named Diodoros, whose apron bears chisel stains. He leads you to a cluster of blocks 5 cubits high, their faces splintered. You examine the fractures. One block has a hairline seam, nearly 3 feet long. Another shows a chunk missing at its western edge. You dip your fingers in water from a clay jug and wet the stone. Darkened lines reveal fine spiderweb cracks extending beneath the surface. You instruct Diodoros to quarry matching blocks from the nearby Tura limestone seam, selecting stones of the same grain and hue. While his quarrymen extract fresh blocks, you show the apprentices how to prepare the damaged faces for replacement, chiseling out the entire cracked section to form a precise tenon that interlocks with the new piece's mortise. You demonstrate the dovetail joint technique, angled cuts that resist horizontal thrust from wind and weight. The apprentices mark the outlines on the old block, then begin careful chiseling under your watchful eye. By midday, the replacement blocks arrive on wooden sledges. You inspect their fit against the prepared mortises. The new stones slide home with satisfying solidity, filling the gaps seamlessly. You then apply a lime mortar grout, a mixture of crushed marble, volcanic ash, and seawater, to bond the seams. Using a broad trowel, you press the grout into every crevice, smoothing the surface flush with the surrounding stone. As the mortar cures, you brush away excess and inscribe your initials and the date in small Greek letters at the repair's margin, a silent signature of your craftsmanship. Overseeing the glass panel installation, with the foundation secured, you hurry back toward the Pharaohs. Your next duty awaits atop the spiral ramp, reviewing the work of the royal glassworkers who arrived this morning with new crystal panels to replace those shattered by recent storms. The glass, imported from Siena, is held in wooden crates lined with straw. Each pane measures roughly 2 cubits square and gleams opalescent in the sun. You climb to the lantern chamber, unlocking the grate to admit fresh air. Inside, the old lead-strapped glass panels lie stacked on a stone bench, their fractured edges a reminder of the lighthouse's vulnerability to gale force winds. A team of 4 glass artisans, clad in protective leather aprons, stands ready with caulking irons and lead cames, thin strips that will frame each pane like the chapters of a sacred text. You begin by measuring the window openings. Each of the 8 octagonal faces requires precise alignment to ensure an unbroken lantern glow. Using your folding rule and dividers, you verify that the openings match the glass panel's dimensions within a half finger's breadth. Where variances crop up, one opening measures 2 fingers wider. You ask an apprentice to shave the limestone jamb slightly with a chisel, bringing the frame to specification. Next, you demonstrate the installation sequence, resting each panel within its lead channel, pressing it gently until seated, then filling the cames with a mixture of pine resin and beeswax to seal wind and salt spray. The artisans work methodically under your guidance. 1. Set the top panel, ensuring it rests flush against the chamber's stone lintel. 2. Layer the laid came, trimming with shears and securing with temporary copper nails. 3. Apply the sealing compound, pressing with wooden wedges to compress the resin into every joint. 4. Smooth the surface, removing excess sealant so that sunlight can pass unobstructed. Within 3 hours, all 8 panels are installed. You light the lantern's brazier briefly to test the reflection. The beam refracts through the clear panes, casting a brilliant wash of light across the chamber's interior. You step outside onto the catwalk balcony to view the effect from below. The morning sun radiates through the glass, shining a prismatic signal across the harbor, proof that the beacon remains unbroken. Managing the fog signal schedule, returning downstairs, you pass the signal room, foghorns silent in the bright air. Though the Alexandria climate seldom permits dense fog, unpredictable shifts can draw mist inland. You consult the fog log scroll, noting that 2 fog events occurred last month, each lasting nearly 6 hours, and that the horns were sounded hourly from dawn until mid-afternoon on those days. The log, maintained by your predecessor, Cleon of Naucratis, shows a pattern. Fogs tend to descend 2 days after northerly winds from Libya. You update the schedule for the coming fortnight. Foghorns sounding at 3 m, 7 m, and 11 m on predicted dates, supplemented by emergency blasts every 15 minutes during zero visibility conditions. You draft the schedule on a new papyrus scroll, seal it, and post it on the wall beside the horns so that relief keepers can follow your plan when you are away. A midday offering and reflection. At midday, you climb once more to the first watch chamber for a brief respite and ritual. You arrange a small table with fresh figs, olives, and a cup of spiced wine, offerings to Helios, herald of light, whose chariot you invoke to speed the dawn. You pour a libation, sprinkle a handful of frankincense on coals, and murmur, "May the light I tend each night mirror the warmth of the rising sun, guiding all who sail these waters to safe harbors." As the fragrant smoke rises, you reflect on the myriad tasks you undertake, chronicling merchants' passage, repairing stones shaken by the sea, fitting crystal panels to the chamber's frame, and mapping fog signals with oracle-like precision. Each duty, though seemingly disconnected, coalesces into a single purpose, preserving the Pharos' function as Alexandria's eternal lamp. Preparing the afternoon watch, refreshed by the offering, you extinguish the small brazier and descend to the storeroom. There, you inspect the reserve oil amphorae, counting them against last night's inventory. 16 amphorae remain, enough for 2 full nights of burning at maximum blaze. Yet you recall that next week's grain shipping festival will demand extended lantern hours, an extra amphora per night. You mark the storeroom ledger accordingly, authorizing the purchase of 8 additional amphorae to arrive with that month's grain supplies. Before the afternoon watch begins, you retrieve a small case of spare wicks, each spun of hardened flax and dipped twice in resin. You place them, along with a brass wick trimmer and oil-soaked cloths, on the signal room bench. Should you need to stand the horn or the lantern dark, a swift wick change could mean the difference between safe harbor and disaster. Finally, you ascend to the lantern chamber one more time. The great brazier's flame is stable and bright, its gilded reflectors polished to a mirror sheen by your morning's labor. You peer through one of the new glass panes, watching seagulls wheel over the harbor, the rats of Rhodes, a trio of merchant galleys under pirate threat, drift across the beam's edge. Their captains must see this light clearly. Your vigilance may deter misfortune. Before closing the lantern grate, you press your palm to the brass framework and whisper, in every element, stone, flame, glass, sound, may we keep the sea's dark unknown at bay. You descend to take up the afternoon watch, keys jangling at your hip, ready to tend flame and horn through the coming hours, and still a single question lingers in your mind. If the Pharos' light can guide countless souls safely through treacherous waters, how many more perish in unseen currents beyond its reach? Yet might a single spark, kept vigilant, have altered the course of their fate? The afternoon sun slides toward the western horizon as you ascend the Pharos' spiral ramp for the final watch of the day. Each step brings you closer to the lantern chamber, where flame and wind conspire to test both your skill and your vigilance. Though the city's bustle below has begun to quiet, the sea remains active. Late returning fishing skiffs, merchantmen on second watches, and the ever-present swell rolling beneath the tower's piers. Today's waning hours will demand more than routine checks. They will call upon every resource you've cultivated, your knowledge of weather, your care for machinery, and your resolve to keep the beacon alive. Preparing for the evening watch. At the lantern chamber entrance, you pause to tighten the straps on your oil-soaked leather apron and secure your leather pouch of spare wicks, flint, and tinder. You glance at the brazier's embers, now reduced to glowing coals. An oil-filled amphora stands ready at your feet, its stopper sealed with pine resin. A quick sniff assures you of the oil's purity. No rancor of age or contamination threatens the wick's steady burn. Beyond the brazier, the gilded reflector panels glimmer, awaiting your final polishing. You tip the amphora's neck to pour a narrow stream of oil into the brazier's reservoir. The coals flare, sending a plume of sparks dancing across the chamber's high dome. You guide the fresh flame to the new wick, then adjust the oil feed to produce a steady, blue-white cone of light. While the brazier reignites, you retrieve your rag dampened with vinegar and run it over each reflector surface one last time. The brass copper mirrors catch the light and spill it outward in a brilliant beam, a single point of fire suspended above the Mediterranean's vast darkness. With the lantern secured, you unlatch the glass panel grates and fasten them with your key, ensuring the sea breeze cannot carry spray into the chamber. You then test the lead cames around each pane, tapping them gently with your knuckle to hear the resonant ping that signifies solid seating. Satisfied, you step back and gaze through the panels. The harbor's entrance glows with your light, a clear invitation to every mariner seeking safe anchorage. The first warning, a rising squall. No sooner have you descended one level to the signal room than a sudden hush falls over the sea. The breeze at your back dies, and you hear the soft hiss of waves against the breakwater shift to a low, insistent roar. Above the darkening water, a long, ragged cloud edges down from the north, a squall line born of desert heat colliding with cooling sea air. You set aside your oil lamp and move swiftly to the horn's pedestal. Unlatching the horn's bronze grate, you lift its mouthpiece to your lips and sound a single, resonant blast. The cathedral-like note of the horn rolls across the harbor, rattles the glass panels in the lighthouse above, and carries clear into the city's stone streets. You pause to listen. A faint echo returns from the eastern mole, and you know that workmen there will strike their own horns in answer. The twin signals warn all who steer these waters to prepare for sudden winds and driving rain. You return to the lantern chamber to verify the brazier's flame. Through the glass, you see the beam bending, deflected by gusts whipping up whitecaps. Seawater spatters the lower panes, forming beads that refract the light. A few rain-soaked feathers, dropped by startled gulls, flutter across the floor. You blot them up with a scrap of canvas and secure both the lamp and the reflectors with extra lead-tied lashings, knowing that even a moment's displacement could extinguish the beam. Battling the squall, sustaining the beacon as the storm closes in, wind rakes the tower with increasing ferocity. The horn's second blast, a staccato series of calls, resounds from both tower and mole, forging a rhythmic signal to any vessel caught in sudden darkness. You take up a stout rope tied to the brazier's stand and cinch it tightly to a floor ring, anchoring the brazier against updrafts that threaten to topple it. A stray gust sends a wave of smoke swirling. You step into the haze, shield your eyes, and peer through the glass. Shapes loom and vanish in the driving rain. Below in the signal room, you have stationed your flask of crushed frankincense. You shake a small handful onto burning coals in a shallow brazier there. Its fragrant smoke mixes with the lamp's heat to clear the chamber's air and dispel any lingering water vapor. This second flame runs at half height, not the primary beacon, but a backup should the main brazier falter. You test its oil supply and its sparkle, then close the signal room grate. Returning to the lantern chamber, you survey the brazier's performance. The oil feed hisses smoothly, and the flame, though buffeted by gale currents, retains a steady core. You dip your tongs into a small crucible of pine resin and apply a thin bead along the edge of each reflector panel's lead came, creating an extra seal against driving spray. Each bead cools instantly, forming a translucent barrier that prevents leaks without dulling the light. Prompted by the storm's increasing intensity, you glance at your ledger, then at the clockwork position of the stars visible through a crack in the panels. The squall will last at least another hour. Your amphora stock must stretch through it, and your wick supply must not run low. You switch to a fresh wick, pre-soaked in resin, trimming the burnt tip and seating it in the brazier's nozzle. Instantly, the beam brightens, cutting through the rain like a sword of fire. The horn's blast next echoes 10 seconds later. A deliberate coordination you set with the harbor guardians below to maintain a constant rhythm that ships can follow, even if visibility drops to zero. Emergency repairs on the move. At the storm's peak, a sudden jolt shakes the lighthouse's girders. One of the lead-strapped glass panels cracks along its lower corner, releasing a cascade of raindrops onto the reflector below. Your heart skips a beat, but training and preparation propel you into action. Snatching up your flint and tinderbox, you strike sparks to light a short-handled torch. You edge toward the cracked panel's frame, then apply a length of ductile lead strip, kept precisely for such emergencies, over the fissure, hammering it flat with a small mallet. Within minutes, the temporary patch holds, and water no longer seeps inside. Then you secure the torch on a hook in the chamber's ceiling. illuminating the main work area and freeing both hands for the delicate task. Coordinating by memory, you climb onto the brazier stand and reach for a spare glass pane tucked behind the reflector's frame. Using a pair of padded gloves, you unhook the broken panel and lower it into your lap. You examine the shard. Though it glitters with clarity, the crack threatens further failure under the storm's brutal winds. You slide the fresh panel into place, guiding its edges into the lead came channels, then harness it with copper nails and seal the edges with boiling resin. The new pane catches the torch's flame, its surface bright and unmarred, a testament to the foresight that placed it here before the storm's wrath. Stepping down, you pause to catch your breath and listen to the horn's sixth blast in quick succession. The wind has peaked and now slams the tower's terrace with rhythmic fury, threatening to bring vessels against the rocky breakwater. Yet above it all, your beam remains unbroken, a lance of light cutting through the tempest, quieting the storm. The long watch. Gradually, the squall's edge passes eastward, and the storm subsides to a stinging drizzle. You lower the torch and extinguish it carefully in a brazier ash pit, then relight your oil lamp to steady the chamber's light. You trim the brazier's wick once more, reducing its flame to a slender, efficient cone. The horn's blasts become less urgent, returning to the standard schedule of 1 per hour. Echoes that drift across calm water, now slick and mirror bright. You unroll your papyrus and make a swift entry in the storm log. Day 3 of Thoth. Squall commenced 3:45 p.m. Wind NW 40 knots. 4 horn blasts per 10 minutes. Brazier maintained. Glass panel number 5 replaced. Reflector seal reinforced. Storm abated 5:15 p.m. Vessels reported safe passage. 2 feluccas. 1 grain auger. You roll and tie the log, ensuring that future keepers will learn from this storm's lessons and maintain vigilance even on deceptively clear days. Dawn of reflection. The keeper's covenant. By the time the final horn has sounded its last embryonic call of the watch, the storm's fury has given way to star-bright skies. You extinguish the horn's secondary brazier and secure the lantern grate. Standing in the lantern chamber's center, you allow yourself a moment of stillness. The bay lies calm, the stars reflected in the water below, and the Pharos stands as beacon and bulwark against both darkness and nature's wrath. Climbing down the spiral ramp to your first watch chamber, you pause at each alcove, at the niches where ancient keepers left shells, at the stone bench where you rehearse your prayers, at the fresh resin and incense lingering in the air. Each token and each scent speaks of countless dawns watched, countless storms weathered, countless hands passed on the keeper's torch. In your private chamber, you light a final candle and sit at the stone desk. You dip your quill into ink and pen, an entry in your personal covenant log, a sealed journal kept away from official records. Tonight, flame and horn stood unwavering. Though the storm tested our lantern and blade, foresight and preparation preserved Alexandria's safe gate. May each ember I tend be worthy of this charge, and each horn blast a promise of diligence. Let no keeper's pride blind him to the frailty of structure, nor his faith to the necessity of action. You close the journal and place it beneath floorboards, a silent witness to your devotion. Before sleep claims you, you step to the slit window and look across the silent harbor to the sleeping city. The Pharos' beam sweeps once more, a gentle arc of light caressing the distant quay. In the hush, you ask yourself, If a single storm can threaten both stone and spirit, how many unseen tempests of apathy, inattention, or complacency still lie in wait to extinguish the flame that guides us all? With that question echoing in your heart, you lay down to rest, knowing that at first light, your lantern and horn will call you once more to stand watch over the ever-turning tides of fate. You awaken before dawn in the dust-white dormitory of the county yamen, where lanterns hang dimly from wooden eaves, and the scent of night-cool stone mingles with the faint sweetness of osmanthus flowers drifting in from the courtyard. As the junior assistant to the bingdui, the county tax collector, you bear responsibility for one of the empire's most mundane yet vital instruments of governance, the ledger of grain and silver contributions drawn from every village and hamlet within your jurisdiction. Your name, Li Cheng, appears only as a small scrawl beside countless others in these records, yet your labor underpins the state's ability to feed its people and defend its borders. You rise quietly from your straw mat, careful not to disturb two fellow clerks sleeping nearby, their robes folded beneath their heads as improvised pillows. You don a simple cotton robe, its sleeves hemmed with the county's distinctive indigo pattern, and wrap your hair into a top knot secured with a lacquered pin. At your waist hangs a slender bamboo slipcase containing writing brushes of varying thickness and a small inkstone carved from local riverstone. In your robe pocket lies a folded strip of red paper, your daily assignment slip, issued by the Bingdui's chief clerk the night before. Stepping through the dormitory door, you enter the yamen's main courtyard, where a single stone lantern stands sentinel. You pause to kneel on the cold granite, offering 3 quiet bows to the portrait of the Hongwu emperor displayed near the gate, a ritual that binds your work to the dynasty's mandate of heaven. Rising, you cross the courtyard to the tax office's flung open doors, where rows of low wooden desks line the shadowed hall. The chief clerk, Master Wang, sits at the head desk, reviewing sheets by lantern light. You approach with bowed head. Your servant Li Cheng reports, you intone. Master Wang looks up, his bushy eyebrows raised. Good morning, Cheng. Today you accompany me to the storeroom. We must inventory the newly received silver taels before recording them in the general ledger. He hands you your slip. Storeroom count, 1,062 taels. Transfer to inventory ledger, 9A. You nod and follow him through a narrow side door into a vaulted annex toward the back of the yamen. The storeroom's heavy wooden doors open with a solemn creak. Inside, the air is still, carrying a faint metallic chill. Rows of wooden shelves line the walls, each shelf bearing ceramic jars and cloth-wrapped parcels stamped with village seals. At the center stand 2 stout balance beams, heavy wooden frames with iron counterweights used for precise weighing. You close the door behind you and latch it. No silver may leave this room unaccounted. Master Wang lights a small brazier, and you assist in trimming the wick of the single oil lamp that will illuminate your work. The lamp's glow dances across the silver's cool luster, revealing small piles of ingots, each stamped with the character Liang, tael, and the number of taels cast. Master Wang gestures. First, verify that the official seal of the provincial treasurer remains unbroken. We must ensure no subtraction during transit. Together, you move to the shelf marked Provincial Remittance 3. A clay seal wreathes the tied cloth covering the ingots. Its red impression is crisp, showing the falcon emblem of Nanjing's treasury. You and Master Wang exchange a satisfied glance. Next, you prepare the balance. You fetch a calibrated iron counterweight marked 1 tael, 6 of them, and place them on a polished bracket. On the opposite pan, you set a clean cloth into which the storekeeper, a stooped man named Zhou, pours the first pile of ingots. One by one, you carefully lower each ingot onto the cloth, tallying aloud. 1, 2, 3. When the count reaches 60, you slide the single tail weights onto the other pan until equilibrium. The beam settles perfectly horizontal, its pointer aligned with the carved notch at the frame's apex. You record in your bamboo slip. Remittance. 3. Batch 1, 60 taels. Verified. Joe brings forward the next bundle. 43 ingots neatly arranged in a bamboo tray. You repeat the weighing, confirming 43 taels, and recording the entry. After 3 more batches, 75, 112, and 200 taels, you arrive at the final parcel, which appears heavier than expected. You count the ingots and call out, Batch 6, supposed 300 taels. Count is only 298 ingots. Master Wang's expression remains calm, yet his eyes narrow. Perhaps a packing error, he suggests. You instruct Zhou to reweigh, using the iron counterweights directly on the beam. Carefully, he shifts 3 100-tael weights onto the pan, an unusual but authorized method, and the beam tilts 2 taels short of balance. You mark the discrepancy. Batch 6, shortage of 2 taels. Parcel held for adjustment. Master Wang frowns and taps his brush against the ledger. An unspoken conversation. He asks you to note the shortage in the adjustment register and seal the parcel again under Yamen supervision. You comply, wrapping the cloth and impressing the seal of the county office beside the provincial one. This shortage will be reported to the circuit intendant, Master Wang says. Until then, no further handling. The waitkeeper, Zhou, nods reverently, understanding the delicacy of the situation. With the storeroom count nearing completion, you collect your bamboo slips, 6 entries totaling 1,262 taels, minus the 2-tael discrepancy. Exiting the storeroom, you oversee the relighting of the wall lanterns in the main hall. The deeper shadows recede, revealing long scrolls of paper affixed to bamboo rods, each bearing columns of meticulously inked figures, grain levies measured in dan, a measure of grain, jute taxes tallied in shi, and silver tithes recorded in taels. You unfold the scroll marked Inventory Ledger 9A and position it carefully on a low bench. Master Wang and you uncap the inkstone and grind a small pool of glossy black ink. He reads your bamboo entries and recites each aloud as you copy them onto the ledger. Remittance 3, first batch, 60 taels. Second batch, 43 taels. Third, 75. Fourth, 112. Fifth, 200. Sixth, 300, 2 taels. Total received, 1,288 taels. Recorded, 1,286 taels. Your brush moves in deliberate strokes, each character formed with the careful pressure and release that ensures permanence. You pause after each line to verify the numerals' alignment in their column, ensuring no misreading will unsettle future audits. Halfway down the scroll, Wang uncovers a second lantern, its soft light revealing a faint watermark of the county's official crest embedded in the paper fiber. He nods approvingly. Good paper, Cheng. Less likely to absorb moisture or fade. As you finish the final character, you allow the ink to dry for a heartbeat, then roll the scroll closed. Master Wang takes the reserved seal, a jade stamp carved with the characters Ju Fu Tang, County Hall Number 9, and presses it firmly into the crimson paste before impressing it onto the scroll's blank margin. The seal's echo resonates on the wooden bench. Now, secure this in the main ledger chest, he instructs. You bow and carry the sealed scroll across the hall, where a stout wooden chest sits chained to the floor. Its lid bears a brass plaque denoting official tax records, with 2 keys, one from Master Wang, one from the Bingdui. You unlock the latch, place the scroll within, and relock it, hearing the satisfying clicks of authority. Having completed the morning's most crucial assignment, you step into the yamen courtyard, where logs smolder in the kitchen hearth, and early arriving villagers line up to submit their grain contributions. Their wooden measures, each container precisely carved, are inspected by the dudui, the grain weighing official. You watch as buckets of barley and wheat pass over the steelyard balance, their clinking grains echoing off the whitewashed walls. When each village's allotment is weighed, its total is jotted on slips attached to the wooden measure's handle. These too will find their way into the general grain ledger later today. Yet for now, you must move on to your next task, escorting the Bingdui's sedan chair to the governor's yamen on the riverbank to present the month's preliminary accounts. Each step along the flagstone path, past throngs of merchants, laborers, and officials, reminds you that your ledger entries, though seemingly inert marks on paper, represent the lifeblood of an entire region. A missing 2 tails could mean short rations for a border garrison, or the withholding of relief during drought. As you approach the waiting chair bearers, you allow yourself a moment to contemplate the ledger's silent power and your own place within it. You adjust the ink-smudged sleeve of your robe, tuck your bamboo brush back into its slip, and prepare to climb into the sedan. In a system where countless lives depend on each recorded measure of grain and tael of silver, how can a single 2-tael discrepancy, and the clerk who notes it, shape the fate of both village and empire? The sedan chair's crimson curtains rustle as you settle inside. The soft cushion beneath your robes, a small comfort after the chill of Dawn's storeroom. 4 lacquered poles extend from the chair. 8 bearers, each wearing matching yellow sashes of county office, hoist you onto their shoulders. With a coordinated shudder, they begin their rhythmic step across the flagstones of the yamen courtyard, drawing admiring glances from lantern-lit windows above. The procession to the governor's yamen. You peer through the side flap, observing the courtyard lanterns receding like beacons as the bearers emerge onto the Red Dragon Road, Alexandria Street. The evening market, carts of medicinal herbs, stalls of salted fish, and baskets of chrysanthemums, has yet to awaken, but solitary shopkeepers sweep their doorsteps by torchlight. The air is cool, carrying faint traces of river-borne mist that drift from the nearby Xiantang River. You recall that this river's bounty, silk cargoes from Suzhou, porcelain crates from Jingdezhen, will soon fill the governor's granaries, just as the grain and silver you logged fill the state coffers. Halfway along the road, you pass the city school, its ornate eaves carved with dragon reliefs. Lanterns within reveal rows of scholars bent over bamboo slates, reciting the 4 books by heart. You reflect that their studies underpin the very examinations that place men like Master Wang and yourself into official posts. Your top knot tingles with pride, and with the awareness that each stroke of your brush carries similar weight in this vast bureaucracy. The procession turns onto Lotus Blossom Avenue, each step measured, each bearer's pace unwavering. The wooden poles creak softly beneath the sedan's weight. A light rain begins to fall, fine droplets pattering on the chair's canopy. You instruct the bearers to maintain speed. Steady, men. Our governor awaits the preliminary accounts. They quicken their pace, boots slapping the road in a muted drum. At the governor's yamen, you descend the steps and bow twice before the bronze lions flanking the entrance. The door guard, a stern-faced soldier in chainmail, unfastens the latch upon seeing your county seal. You enter the inner courtyard, where a pool of koi circles beneath willow branches, and the first lanterns of the morning cast a golden glow on carved marble balustrades. Master Wang follows, bearing the narrow scroll tube containing the sealed monthly preliminary accounts. Presenting the preliminary accounts. Inside the grand reception hall, lacquered screens bear scenes of imperial hunts and courtly banquets. At the head sits Governor Li Ming, his official hat's red tassel drooping as he peruses a set of woodblock printed memorials. Two flanking magistrates stand ready. Master Wang kneels and presents the sealed tube to Li Ming, reciting in formal tone, "Your Excellency, Li Ming of Yamen County submits the preliminary account of grain and silver, 1,286 taels received, pending two-tael discrepancy adjustment, per the Hongwu Emperor's statutes." The governor raises his hand, and a clerk brings forward a low table. Master Wang places the tube upon it and hands Li Ming a small chisel. The governor breaks the seal with practiced precision. From within, he withdraws the scroll, unrolls it, and scans the inked characters. A furrow forms between his brows, his only visible sign of contemplation. After a moment, he nods to one magistrate, who motions for the clerk to read aloud. Grain tribute, 8,120 shy. Silver tribute, 1,286 tiles. Village 16 reports 2 tiles unremitted. Adjustment pending district appeal. The governor's gaze shifts to you. Li Cheng, he says, his voice resonant in the hushed hall. Your record is clear and well executed. Yet this 2-tile shortage may signal deeper issues. I order you to accompany my envoys to Village 16 at first light and reconcile the account personally. Do not return until the discrepancy is resolved. You bow deeply. Your Excellency's command is my duty. Master Wang and the magistrate exchange a glance, and you sense the weight of responsibility pressing upon you more urgently than ever. The road to Village 16. After the formalities conclude, you and Master Wang exit the governor's yamen under a crispening sky. The city's stone pavements glisten with rain as you make your way to the north gate, through which a carriage and 2 riders await. Master Wang arranges for the county escort, a low-ranking constable, and 2 footmen to accompany you. He hands you a second slip. Village 16, audit, confirm embezzlement or clerical error. Report within 2 days. As the carriage rattles toward the north gate, you unroll your bamboo brush and jot a note in your personal ledger. 003 day of lunar month. Received provincial remittance. 2-tael shortage. Requires field audit. Prepare travel papers, secure escort, and review Village 16's registry. The exchange of horse-drawn carriage for footmarch occurs at the gate. Your escort forms a protective semicircle as you step onto the country road. Master Wang takes a palanquin nearby, preferring comfort, but you choose to walk, your robe sleeves damp from rain, your brush and inkstone bumping gently in your satchel. Inspecting the county registers, before reaching the village, Master Wang directs you to the sub-prefect's yamen in Subdistrict 3, where local registers of land parcels, household slips, and prior tax tallies await. You cross a wooden bridge over a narrow canal and enter the low-roofed yamen, marked by faded vermilion beams. Inside, an assistant sub-prefect greets you courteously and spreads open 2 scroll cases. 1. Land Registry. Scroll lists plots, registered owners, acreage in MU, and the associated tax obligation. 2. Tax Payment Scroll. Records actual deliveries of grain, in she, and silver, in tails, over the past 3 seasons. You take the brush from the assistant's hand and flip carefully through the brittle land registry scrolls. Finally, you find it, Village 16, Chen Family Division. 10 households are recorded, their holdings measured and taxed in precise columns. The first entry reads, Chen Da, 30 mu of land, taxed at 15 shy of grain, which equates to 3/4 of a tael of silver. Next is Chen with 20 mu, 10 shi in tax, and half a tael in silver. Chen San, perhaps the most prosperous, holds 50 mu. His tax stands at 25 shu, valued at 1¼ taels of silver. The entries go on, name after name, line after line, until the scroll ends with the total. 300 mu of land, 150 shy in tax, and a total silver equivalent of 7½ taels. It's a quiet reminder of how life, labor, and land were once measured, not just in fields and grain, but in generations. Turning to the tax payment scroll, you see entries for the current month. Chen Family Division delivered 148 shi of grain. Silver paid 7 taels. A quick multiplication shows that 150 shi of grain equate to 7.5 taels. Yet only 7 taels arrived, exactly a 0.5 tael per missing shi discrepancy, totaling 2 taels across the village. The records match the storeroom's shortage precisely. You frown. A clerical rounding error in converted silver? Or deliberate underpayment? Reconstructing the village delivery. To discern the cause, you ask the sub-prefect's clerk to produce the monthly delivery notes. Small bamboo slips attached to the wooden grain measure handles of each household. The clerk fetches a bundle. Chen Da, delivered 15 shi, silver receipt 0.75 tile. Chen delivered 10 shur, receipt 0.5 tile. Chen San, delivered 25 shur, receipt 1 tile. You pause. Chen San's delivery should yield 1.25 tiles, yet the receipt lists only 1 tile, a 0.25 tile shortfall. Checking Chen Si and Chen Wu shows similar undercredits of 0.25 tile each. 5 households undercredited by a quarter tael each. 5 x 0.25, 1.25 taels, plus 2 x 0.375, 0.75 taels. But Chen Lu's 40 shi appears to credit 2.25 taels instead of the correct 2 taels, an overcredit of 0.25 tael, partially offsetting the others. You map the pattern on a scrap of paper, mindful of both arithmetic and human factors. The sub-prefect's clerk might have reversed coefficients. The delivery team might have miscommunicated measures, or someone might have pocketed silver. You display your calculations to Master Wang, who strokes his beard thoughtfully. The pattern suggests either a misapplied conversion rate, 13 shy to 1 tael, or systematic rounding to the nearest quarter tael. We must visit the mill and the delivery crew. He nods to the assistant sub-prefect. Arrange horses for Li Cheng to inspect the mill house feedstock and to interview the delivery clerk at Village 16. An unresolved question. As you gather your papers and prepare to depart, the county bell tolls midday, and villagers pause their fields to honor the noonday prayers. You slip back into your robe, adjust your inkstone in its case, and step out into the sunlit yard, boots tapping on the wooden floorboards. You realize that the fate of these rounded numbers may hinge on the personal judgment of a single clerk who chose to approximate or embezzle. Yet, beyond deliberate theft, is there a deeper flaw in the system of measures and conversions that allows such gaps? With the sub-prefect's horses waiting, you mount the first steed, your bamboo slips in hand, and contemplate the journey ahead. Will you unearth human malfeasance, systemic error, or the subtle interplay of both? The clip-clop of hooves echoes across the narrow earthen lanes as you leave the sub-prefect's yamen, mounted on a lean sorrel gelding loaned by the county stable. Master Wang trails on his palanquin, bearing a small retinue of scribes and an armed escort to safeguard you should your inquiries rouse resentment. Your direction, first to the village mill house, a modest complex of water wheels and grinding stones on the outskirts of Village 16, then onward to the tax clerk's home for a more pointed interview. Inspecting the mill house precision, you arrive at the mill house just as its wooden sluice gates creak open to admit river flow. Two millers, brothers by blood and by trade, stand at the grinding stones. Massive circular wheels turning steadily as water spills over the paddles. The ground grain pours from beneath in pale ribbons, filling wicker baskets for later weighing. You dismount and tie your horse to a stake, approaching the millers with courtesy. "Good morning," you begin. "I am Li Cheng of the county yamen, here to verify the measures applied before submission to the county storehouses." The elder miller, Fanda, nods and withdraws a small graduated measure, a hollowed wooden cylinder marked at the top 1 shy, and halfway 0.5 shy. He holds it aloft so you can inspect the marks. The measure's interior has been planned smooth and burnished with beeswax to prevent grain sticking. You ask him to fill it with freshly milled grain, which he does with a wooden scoop. You weigh the filled measure on a portable steelyard balance, the same style as in the storeroom, and the beam levels precisely at 1 shy. The half measure also yields exactly half the weight. Satisfied with what you've seen, you turn to Fanda and ask about his personal records. He nods and guides you to a small wooden shelf in the millhouse office, where a rolled bamboo scroll rests between jars of ink and old brushes. "This," he says, "is the mill log." You unroll it gently. The ink is neat and methodical, a daily account of how much grain was processed. Day 1, 150 full measures and 30 half measures, a total of 165 shy. Day 2 records 142 full and 20 half. That makes 152 shy. Day 3 shows 148 full, 22 half, 159 shy. Day 4 is similar, 145 full, 25 half, 157 shy. And day 5, today, 148 full measures, 18 half. Again, a total of 157 shy. Each line tells the story of a day's labor. The rhythm of the mill, steady and unchanging, echoing through days of quiet work. You note that on day 4, the total is 157 shy, matching the tax payment scroll's entry of 148 shy from the Chen households, aligned numbers until day 5's 157 shy. Yet only 148 shy were recorded for the village's tax payment, leaving 9 shy unaccounted. You realize that the mill log is separate from the tax log. While Chen family's tax scroll shows 148 shy delivered, The mill confirms 157 shy were provided this morning. That gap of 9 shy should yield 0.45 tael of silver. Yet your silver ledger discrepancy was 2 taels, not 0.45 tael. The elder miller shrugs. We deliver what we grind. Any mismatch between what we bring and what your yamen records must occur later. You record these details in your audit notebook, noting the separate chain: mill log, village clerk's tally, county storeroom. The silver discrepancy is larger, indicating that grain measures alone cannot fully explain the tael shortage. Confronting the village tax clerk, your party remounts and proceeds to the cluster of wooden homes where the village tax clerk, Ju Li, resides. By custom, his home stands adjacent to the ancestral hall, a simple 2-room structure with a tiled roof. A teakwood desk sits near the door, its inkstone and brushes covered by a silk cloth. You dismount as Master Wang approaches Ju Li's father, the former clerk, to request an audience. Inside, you spread your calculation draft on the desk's surface. Chen family division. Sure delivered. 157. Expected silver. 7.85 tiles. Silver recorded. 7 oro taels. Short 0.85 tael. Correction noted from storeroom. 2.0 taels shortage. Julie, a slender man with ink-stained fingertips, bows and motions for you to sit. You begin gently. Clerk Ju, your ledger shows 148 shi delivered for tax, yet the mill log and our audit confirm 157 shui. How did 7 shi vanish from your records? He swallows, eyes darting. My lord, I recorded the amounts as reported by the village custom. Perhaps some families withheld grain this morning. Unhappy with the spring's yield, you press him for details. Which families? Which hamlets? What conversations preceded delivery? He names 3 minor landholders who claimed elder exemptions. And those grain volumes, 3 shi, 2 shi, and 2 shi respectively, match the 7 shi shortfall. They presented household exemption certificates, Ju Li explains, signed by the elder council. I accepted them in good faith. You examine the certificates, parchment scraps tied with hemp, and inspect the seals of the village elder council, noting that one seal is faint and smudged. You also question the legitimacy of those exemptions under county policy. Only families with incomes below a threshold qualify, and records show all 3 hold sufficient acreage to exceed the limit. Then you pivot to silver. Your silver tally credits only 7 taels for 148 shi. Should have been 7.4 taels. Where did the extra 0.4 tael go? Julie's face pales. A conversion rule, 5 shy to 0.25 tael, was applied, rounding down each household's payment to avoid coin fractions. He demonstrates, for a household owing 25 shy, 1.25 taels, he recorded 1 tael, discarding the 0.25 tael fraction. Applying this rounding across 5 large households produces a cumulative shortfall of 1.25 taels, combined with the 7 shi omitted, which equals 0.35 taels. When converted correctly, the total shortage approximates 1.6 taels. Close to the 2 tael storage discrepancy, you realize that systematic rounding errors, combined with uncertified exemptions and a lack of fractional silver handling, led to the 2 tael and additional smaller gaps. Rather than malfeasance, it is a mixture of administrative oversimplification and local privilege abuse. Reconciling the account, you instruct Julie to reverse the rounding. Each household must pay the precise conversion of 157 shy, 20 shur per 0.25 tael, 0.785 taels, broken into quarters. He protests, but no one carries quarter tael coins. You nod, acknowledging the logistical impracticality. Thus, you propose a hybrid solution. Households deliver the computed silver fraction as grain, using a local grain silver exchange rate 200 shy per one tile to supply the missing 0.85 tael in kind. This requires each family to remit additional grain to account for the silver fraction. Master Wang endorses the plan. Better to collect 170 shi in kind than leave 2 taels unaccounted for. You draft the adjustment notice on crisp bamboo slips. Village 16, Chen Family Division. Remit 0.85 taels, equivalent in 170 shi grain at 200 shi per tael. Payment due within 3 days, or face penalties under Article 47 of the Tax Code. Julie stamps each slip with the county seal and distributes them to the families. With his ledger updated, reflecting precise conversions and exemption validations, you direct him to accompany you to the county storeroom to deliver both silver and grain adjustments. Finalizing the reconciliation, back at the yamen, you oversee the reweighing of the 0.85 tael equivalent in grain. Using the county granary's granary scales, you measure 170 shu of millet, parcel it into official sacks, and attach the tax slip. Master Wang inspects the silver account. Julie now remits a corrected 7.85 taels, stored in a small cloth-wrapped bundle. You verify the weight on the steel yard and note the perfect balance. Together, you and Master Wang return to the storeroom chest, unlocking it with your keys. You place the corrected silver bundle and the 170 shi grain sacks alongside the previous remittance, noting in the adjustment register, Village 16, Chen Division. Original receipt 148 shi 7 taels. Corrected receipt 170 shi to 785 taels. Net increase 122 shi to 085 taels. Storeroom balance restored to 1,288 taels total. Master Wang seals the entries, then summons the county clerk to update the general tax ledger accordingly. Reflection on bureaucracy's balancing act. As sunset gilds the yamen's eaves, you stand before the locked ledgers and reflect on the tangled web of measures, conversions, and human judgment. A 2-tael discrepancy nearly led to punitive measures, yet it stemmed from rounding conventions and unvetted exemptions rather than outright embezzlement. Your intervention has corrected both grain and silver records, restored county revenues, and underscored the necessity of precise arithmetic alongside humane administration. In a system where metrics govern survival, grain for the granaries, silver for the state, small errors reverberate through every level of governance and daily life. You consider how many other villages shoulder similar rounding burdens, how many clerks convert fractions with approximations, and how many officials face ethical tests when discretion meets regulation. You close the adjustment register and bow in gratitude to the ancestral tablets in the yamen's shrine. Your humble brushstrokes, though invisible to most, have realigned measures that sustain armies, feed scholars, and pay the artisans' wages. Yet one question lingers as you deposit your inkstone in its box. If the empire's strength rests on the precision of its ledgers, how can a vast bureaucracy guard against the small approximations and local exemptions that, unchecked, gather into gaping wounds in the state's provisions? And who among us bears the quiet duty to spot, question, and reconcile them? As the last brass scale settles into quiet repose and the lanterns of the market fade beneath the star-scattered sky, carry with you the steady lesson of those careful measures, that every grain, every receipt, and every entry in the ledger holds a story of trust, fairness, and the delicate balance that sustains a civilization. Which moment resonated most with you? Was it the precise calibration of weights, the tension of uncovering a hidden error, or the simple dignity of each honest transaction? Let me know your favorite part in the comments below. If tonight's journey through Timbuktu's bustling bazaar brought you calm reflection, gently tap-like, share this tale with fellow history dreamers, and subscribe to Nocturnal History for more soothing stories from ages past. Until our next adventure, may your thoughts remain balanced and your dreams rest as peacefully as those storeroom scales at sunset.